Come in someone else's. None of you want to come on.
Right.
He said flat.
Right, good evening.
Instead of being broadcast around the world.
We're up to Daf Lamed Amud base, the bottom of the page. We're talking about making Yehuda Tchumen. Somebody asked me a question, I wasn't sure, but now I'm a bit more sure. Regarding Yehuda Tchumen, you have to have enough for every person participating in the Eiruvin. So let's say you're on holiday in Austria, and you want to get to Shul, and it's 4,000 amos away. It's not enough to put 2 slices of... Yes, and they all want to use the Yehuda Tchumen. Then you have to have 2,000 eggs, 2 eggs per person. Oh, the Yehuda Chatzevos is not like that. Yehuda Chatzevos is enough to have one set. It's one of the differences between Yehuda Tchumen and Yehuda Chatzevos. Okay. We're up to the Lamed base. For the Tanya, we were talking about Eiruvin, and you have to hear Chaim. No, Chaim. What's your first name? Sorry, Chaim. You had a drink. Which one? You prefer this?
Yeah.
Oh. Anybody else want a drink? Okay. We'll be discussing the fact that when you make an Eiruvin Tchumen, you have to be able, according to one shitta, to be able to eat the food. According to another shitta, that somebody can eat the food. And we had a discussion what about a nazi with wine and a kohen with a saw with truma. I think what is a bigger chiddush. What the Tanya? We have a vice. Yehuda top of Lamed Aleph Amud Aleph. Me'alvin lekohen toy betruma tahira bekeva. You can do an Eiruvin Tchumen for a kohen with truma at a base at a keva. The chiddush over here is twofold. It's a double chiddush. One, normally when truma is put on the keva, what would you expect for the truma to happen to it? To become tummy. Truma Tamea is forbidden to everybody, not just the Ksov, it's also us the kohen. So the truma becomes forbidden to be eaten. Furthermore, for the kohen to get there is impossible because it's in the base of clothes. Well, it's not actually base clothes, it's a keva. So over here we have a double chiddush. Chiddush number 1 is there's no access to it, it's in the keva. Chiddush number 2 is the food itself is not usable because it's become tummy by being on the keva. So therefore there's a double chiddush here.
Can you not eat tummy food?
No, you can't. No, it's truma tamea. It's truma tamea. Well, it's truma tahira, which you put it on the keva. But as soon as you put it on the keva, it generally will become tummy. So Rashi tells us, what would you say, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if it would be chulin tahira? Would that be more likely mutter or more likely also? Mutter, very good, mutter. I mean, it's even if it's truma kavachayim chulin, because by chulin, if it's tamei, it's no problem eating chulin, which is tamei. But even truma tamei,
how can you have truma tamei?
No, it's not yet tamei. It's truma tahayva, which you put on the keva. Now the Gemara is going to discuss. Hey Chiaz, so the first question is, how is the kohen going to even get to be able to eat the food? Answers the Gemara. The sheda table migdal in the wagon, the box, covered. Well, what happens is he gets carried along, and we're going b'shita that oil zog shmei oil, and therefore it's a protection. So we're okay with that. The problem is, but the actual food, as soon as the food is put down, the food becomes stomach. Answers it's not muchshara kavatuma. It was needed with fruit juice. So here Tesis brings 2 girsois as to how to be govers. Again, we know halacha machshirin that for something to become tomei, it once has to be wet. If it never got wet, if you got an apple that never got wet, and even if a dead person was to touch it or be in the same room, it will not become tomei. So over here we're talking about truma tahira, which will not become tomei. Why would it not become tomei? Because what will happen is it's not mukhsha. So now the point is that the Torah says either you're gerus as without the oi, so shloi huchshua, it's not mukhsha kavatuma. For example, it was kneaded with fruit juice, meaning bread is usually Usually use water in the kneading process. But if you actually use orange juice, which is not one of the 7 mashkim, it's not one of the yad shochadam, so therefore it won't become mukhshel kavatuma. Alternatively, it says you can read it oi. Shaloi huchshava, we talk about, let's say, fruit that were not mukhsha. Oi, we're talking about bread which was kneaded with fruit juice. Okay. It says, it's going to become tummy. It's now on a keva. Let's say this is the keva, right? So you've got a keva over here. So the food's on top. How are you going to get it off without getting it tummy? That means how you're not going to get tummy yourself. So the Gemara says, you can't put your hand over because then you'll become a tummy. So what happens is you take a bowl, which is a flat piece of wood, which is not able to become tummy, because for wood to become a tummy, it needs to be fashioned into a keli. So you put the wood, like say a log of wood, and then you take the food off the keva without you getting tummy, because the wood will not become tummy because it's not a keli.
Anything that's not keli.
Anything that's not keli. It's easier with wood because by metal it doesn't need to be. Shute matches is mekabel tummy. It's by wood. No, by metal would become tummy. So by wood we're talking about shute keli 8 then become tummy. Shute matches does become tummy. The halacha is that if you put a tefach over by a tefach over the keva, so that becomes the oil, and then the wood will become tummy even if it's not a keli. A roof becomes tummy even if it's not a keli. And well, we take it from the back, means it's like a keli, where the end of it goes to a point, like I don't know, like what would be like a triangle, a wood shaped in a triangle, like a knife or fork maybe. Where what happens is and therefore you don't have a tefach going over the keva. So in order for it to be mutter, for a person to be yotzei vuvei tchumen with truma tahira, which is on the keva, we have to have 3 kimtas. The person can get there with the oil zolk, that's a carriage. We're talking about where it's not mukhshel lekabel tumah, the food, and you're taking it off with a keli, which is a pshute kli 8, which is not a tefach by a tefach. That means a wooden log, which is not a tefach by a tefach, so it's not oil, and plus it's a pshute kli 8, and therefore it's not lekabel tumah. Says the Gemara, Yochi, if you've got all these kimtas, my tamadu abono, what's the soul of the chachamim? Answers the Gemara, Kasavi osaliknes bais b'suyano. A keva is suyano. Anybody know how we know they're not allowed to get benefit from a keva? No. You're not allowed to get benefit from anything to do with the mace. Not from his tachrichin, not from his ovoin. No, because it says Hashem buried Sham there, Sham Egla Wufa is osabano. So everything to do with the mace is osabano. So the Chachamim are not concerned over here about anything else, but that you're using the keva as a place to keep your Eruv Tchumen, so you're being nene from Yisrael. Pray the Gemara.
You're not having enough.
Pray the Gemara. Chad with the Sava Mutter. Does Yehuda hold this Mutter? Everybody agrees with the principle they're not allowed to be nene from Yisrael and the keva is Israel. So what's for Yehuda? I said, look, some mitzvahs lavenisnit. No, there's no pleasure. I'm doing a Ruvi Tchumen. I'm trying to do a mitzvahs like listening to shofar with something which is mutano, which is mutter. The Gemara, Hodam, Rava mitzvah venisnit. No, Rava said mitzvah venisnit. No, Lema ketanoy amonishmaite. The Chayav Rava was speaking according to Machlokes Tanoim. Why? Because we explained that we're talking about in Kimta where there's no problem of tumah, because we talk about Pshut Kli 8, which is not tefach by tefach, and the fruit is not mukhshel kabel tumah. So the only problem left was that it was asabano. And the Chachamim say that you're not allowed to. Yehuda says you are allowed to. So this, and the only logic we could come up with is a machlokes whether you're allowed to be nena from a keva. So the whole machlokes is whether mitzvah whether you're allowed to get hano is mitzvah considered the hano that you're benefiting from a keva. Why are you allowed to make Eiruvin Tchumen? One man says you're only allowed to make Eiruvin Tchumen for a mitzvah. What's a mitzvah? What's a mitzvah you make Eiruvin Tchumen? What's a mitzvah? To go to a Shiur, to go to shul, or to go to a Beis HaMishta, to go to a Shavah Bracha. That's a special mitzvah as well. So therefore, that's when you're allowed to make Eiruvin Tchumen. But let's say you just want to fancy going for a walk, you're not allowed to make Eiruvin Tchumen. That's one opinion. The other man says, no, you're allowed to make Eiruvin Tchumen for any reason in the world. You want to make Eiruvin Tchumen for any reason in the world, you're allowed to. So therefore, We're talking about over here using a keva to place over tchumen. And everybody agrees, like Rava holds, mitzvahs lav lehenis nitnu. There's no problem of getting enough mitzvah. The machlokes which Rav Yehuda and the Chachamim can use a keva to put your truma tahira on is basically like this. If Rav Yehuda holds you're allowed to, because he holds you're only allowed to use a tchumen for a mitzvah. So therefore you're getting no pleasure from it, it's just a mitzvah. The Chachamim hold that you're allowed to do a tchumen for any reason. So therefore you're benefiting from the Uve Tchumen, because let's say you fancy a walker, that's not a mitzvah. So therefore that's what you said yesterday, Chaim, that depending on why you're doing the Uve Tchumen is whether the Uve Tchumen is considered a pleasure. Says the Gemara, Rav Yosef was one who said that you can't do Uve Tchumen only for Dvar Mitzvah. Rav Yosef go into Machlokes, because it works out that according to the Chachamim, you're allowed to do Uve Tchumen for any reason. Because if you're allowed to do it for a mitzvah, then why shouldn't you use a kiva? The answer must be that because he holds it's no, is obviously allowed to do it for any reason. The kulam ein ma'avin, you're only allowed to do an eruv for a mitzvah. Ein ma'avin advar mitzvah. Or the kulam mitzvahs lavenis. There's no problem getting. There's not considered a pleasure being mekam mitzvah. You don't need to be guarded. Is completely different. You put the Eruv Techumen on the keva. Now, the only reason you have Techumen is for mitzvah. And it's lav lenis nitnu. So there's no problem over here of getting pleasure from Yisur no, because you're not getting a pleasure from Yisur no, because you're only allowed to do a Techumen for mitzvah. The problem is like this. When is Eruv Techumen Kodesh Shvisa? As Shabbos comes in. After Shabbos comes in, do you need the keva to protect your food? I mean, you're putting it on the keva. You could put it on the floor. Rats and mice will get it, dogs, etc. So you're putting it on the keva. Rav Yehuda holds there's no problem. Why? Because you're not interested. You only want it to be Kodesh Shvisa. Since you want to be Kodesh Shvisa, you put it there. You've done your mitzvah. You still don't care what happens to the food afterwards. Actually, according to the Chachamim, they think to themselves like this. They hold that part of the reason you put the food there is that you know that if during middle of Shabbos, when you go for your long walk to visit, to go to hear the Shiur, on the way to hear the Shiur, you might get hungry, and therefore you want the food. Eating the food has nothing to do with the mitzvah anymore. Eating the food is simply because you're hungry for pleasure. So for the machlokes of Yehuda and Chachamim is, do you want to use it as protection for your Eruv after Shabbos comes in? Rav Yehuda holds you don't need it to be protected. So therefore you're gaining nothing from the keva, so you're not getting any anos, there's no problem. Chachamim say, yes, you are trying to gain. You're trying to gain the protection of your food. Gaining protection for your food, that's a problem of mitzvahs getting hanof, getting pleasure from Yisur hanof, from a keva, and therefore it's forbidden. For example, you shouldn't use a keva. Let's say, for example, you are a very hot day. So you see a keva, you want to lie on in its protection. You have to be careful not to be getting ned or to sit on one. You're not allowed to get a no from Yisur no. It's all asaba no, kvomo is asaba no. So that's the end of the sugya of putting Eruv Techumen in a Pesach vase. Next Gemara, next whole Omot, comes up 4 times in Shas, almost word for word exactly the same, which means that by the time you finish Daf Yomi, you'll know it off by heart, Mr. Shem. Comes up 4 times, and it goes exactly the same Shakla V'Taria, which is like this. The Mishnah discusses which foods you can use for Uve Tchumen, let's say Demai, something with Hekdash, Ma'aser Sheni, and which foods you can't. And the Gemara asks every single one of them one of the 2 questions. Either, if it's permitted to eat, so obviously you can use it for Uve Tchumen. And if they're forbidden to eat, obviously you cannot use it for Uve Tchumen. So the Mishnah lists of foods which are permitted to eat and you can use for Uve Tchumen. The Gemara asks on each one, what's the Chiddush? And the more finds a Kimta, what's the Chiddush? And each one which is forbidden to eat, the Gemara says, of course, if it's forbidden to eat, what's the Chavim in it that you should be able to, let's say, for example, Teva. Teva you're not allowed to eat. So what's the Chiddush that you can't use for Uve Tchumen? You're not allowed to eat it. So that is the whole Shakratah, the whole next Omot. And it comes up 4 times in Shas. Twice you've already had it since Brachas. So you'll tell me the 2 and I'll tell you the 4th. Because once over here, so there's 3 more. Shabbos Brachas. But where does it come in? I'll do 50 pence if I'm scared I'll get bankrupt. No, so by Brachas it comes in that for Zimun, the halacha is if you eat food which is forbidden, you can't do zimun. If you eat food which is permitted, you can't do zimun. And this is exactly the same list. And they will ask exactly the same questions, and they will give exactly the same answers. If it's a food which is permitted to eat, like the mai, for example, or mais sheni, which is redeemed, so of course you can do zimun on it. And if you can't eat it, then what's the habit that they should be able to do zimun on it? That's where it comes up with brachas. In Shabbos, it comes up once regarding clearing food for your guests, and the Mishnah brings exactly the same list, and the Gemara goes to exactly the same shakal. If it's food which is permitted, of course it's permitted. If it's forbidden, of course it's forbidden. And it comes up once more in Psachim. When we get to Psachim, it'll remind me of the other three. Is that matzah, you're allowed to have matzah from Ma'aseh Sheni, which is redeemed. You're not allowed to have matzah from Tevel. And again, we'll ask the question, what would you have Avnei? You can use matzah from Tevel. How will you be able to eat it, say, the night? You can't eat anyway. You're not going to... That means the whole next Amud, literally, I don't know if it's like word perfect, but it will be almost word perfect, this whole Amud in 4 places in Shas. No, the original place is in Brachas, I suppose. Why is one need to repeat that? I don't know. Why the Gemara? No, it's the Gemara goes to every one. What's the habit? And the Gemara says exactly the same questions and exactly the same answers in all 4 places. Oh, so since you know it anyway, so we don't need to go through it again. Oh, Chazor. That's right. Chazor, we'll do it for Chazor. That's it. Marvin b'Dmai. You're allowed to do an Eruv Techumin with Dmai. What is Dmai? Anybody know what's Dmai? Right. You bought it from an Amoritz, you don't know if you took Tumas Amaisa. So what's the obvious question? How can you not allowed to eat Dmai? Okay. Ubamaisa Vishan Shnita Tumosai. What? Oh. Very briefly, when you have a produce, first you have to take the kum, you take truma. Truma goes to the Kohen, the 40th, 50th, or 60th. Then you take ma'aser rishon, which goes to the Levi. After the Levi gets 10%, of that 10%, he has to give 10% to the Kohen, which means the Kohen gets 1%. Why? If I've got 100, that's a bunch of grapes, I give 10 to a Levi. Anybody here a Levi? No Levim, but loads of Kohen, but no Levim. So I give 10 to a Levi. The Levi gives 1/10 of that, so he gives 1 to the Kohen. So that's Trumas Maisa. Trumas Maisa is very common. It's got the halachas of Truma, right? That's it. It's got Kedusha, not that. When it's Tomei Maisa, though, once Trumas Maisa has been taken out of it, a Levi is allowed to eat. When it's Tomei, is allowed to sell it, it's allowed to do whatever he wants. So it's even allowed to eat to this person. Truma is a 40th, 50th, or 60th. Yes. Okay. So Maisa Rishon, which you've taken Trumas Maisa from it, you're allowed to use it for Uvei Tchumen. And the obvious question is, of course, you've done everything right. Why should the world not be able to use it for Uvei Tchumen? No. Anyway, even if, first of all, to our Levi, but secondly, even not to our Levi, Ma'aser Rishon's got no Kedusha, anybody's allowed to eat it. Uva Ma'aser Sheni V'Hekdesh Sheniftu. Ma'aser Sheni is some of the years of Shemitah. You take Ma'aser Sheni, that's the, when you said this first, second, fourth, and fifth. You take a second Ma'aser, of which you take it to Yerushalayim. If you can't take it to Yerushalayim, you redeem it. Or hektish, which you redeem. And again, the obvious question is, of course, you can use it for Tchumen. There's nothing wrong with it. What? 10%. Also. But they can use chalo and tuma. Tevel, you can't use tevel. Tevel is produce which you've not taken to a ma'aser from. So you can't use ma'aser rishon which you haven't taken tuma. And you can't use ma'aser sheni hektish which not be redeemed. Says the Gemara, T'mai, that you're allowed to use the mai. You can't eat it. Why can't you eat it? Because the Jabbalon, they were choishes for those people that don't take Tumas Ma'ases. Answers, well, we could do boy mafke l'nichse. Only since a person could be mafke all of his property and become poor, but chazile, then you'd be allowed to eat it. Hashtanami chazile. So even now,
why don't it come to us for? Couldn't they sell out anyway?
Let me say this: the fact is that other people can benefit from it. So we're going to now b'shit sumchas that you actually yourself have to benefit from it. So the Gemara says, look at the first few words of the bottom thesis. What Shai said, he's going to have extra lechaim tonight because of this. T'mai holochazile near to the sumchas dafka poich. He's only asking for the sumchas. So I'm not going to chazile chazilani. Okay. So the Gemara says like this: that it could be mafki all his property, and then we report chazile ashadami chazile. The Tanan, like we learned to the Mishnah, machinus anim demai. We're allowed to give a poor man demai on top of lamadala from base. There's achsanya demai. Achsanya is who? Armies that you're forced to put up, then you're allowed to feed them with demai. Every time the Gemara brings this up, that the Bishamai hold, you're not allowed to feed them demai, and we still say you're allowed to. My sedition that you took to Mas Nice. Shita. So it's obvious. Lo itzvicha sheikdimoi beshibolin v'not lo mimenu tumas ma'isa. V'lo not lo mimenu tuma gedola. We'll talk about the complicated case. Let's say I'm a Yisrael. Right, I'm a Yisrael. So I have 100 bunches of grapes. What should I do? 40 to 50, after I've done Bikurim, I take a 40th, 50th, or 60th, give it to a Kohen. Let's say I want to a 50th. So I give 2 bunches to the Kohen. Then I take 10% of what's left. I've only got 98 left. So I take 9.8 and give it to a Levi, of which he gives 10%, which is about 1, to the Kohen. Right? 10%, he gives a tenth of what he got. He only got about 10, so he gives a tenth of that to the Kohen. This Levi comes up to me and he says to me, look, if you give a 50th of all the produce, you lose first 2, and then another 10 when you give it to me. I'll tell you what I'll do for you. I'll take it from you now, the Ma'aser Vishen, before you had a chance to take Truma. That means before the Kohen gets a chance, give me quickly the 10%, which you have to give me anyway. And then you'll only be left with 90. And from that, you can take Truma. And then you've saved yourself taking Truma on that which you're anyway going to eventually give Ma'aser Vishen. You're paskin, you're not allowed to. You're Kohen, you're biased. Oh, again, but that's the question over here. And the Gemara is going to say back and forth. The Gemara is going to say it depends. What does it depend on? Let's say 2%. Let's say Truma is 2%. A 50th is 2%. A 50th is 2%. 1/50. Yeah. 1/50. So you don't gain very much, but if you've got 100,000 bunches of grapes, it becomes so big. Again, if you've got 100,000 bunches of grapes, it can be again. The Levi comes along and says to me, give me the Ma'aser Vishen before you've taken Truma. And then what will happen is you won't need to take Truma on that which you're anyway planning to give Ma'aser Vishen. You only have 90 left and you only take Truma on that. The Gemara here says that it depends when the Levi comes. If the Levi came before I'm obligated to give Truma, now when am I obligated to give Truma? Oh, when you pile it, when it's become, that's right, mivuach. When I've already done mivuach, when I'm already chayav in Truma. If the Levi comes then not only does the Levi have to give Trumas Ma'aser, the Levi has to also give Truma. So let's say the Levi came after I did mivuach. I've got this big pile, and I give him 10. So then he has to give 10% of it because of Trumas Ma'aser. But before he gives the 10% of it, he has to give Truma 50th of 10 and give it to the Kohen. But if he came before I did mivuach, before it became dogon, before it was royal for Truma, before I made it into a pile, then he has saved me some money and he gets it and he does not need to give Truma Gedola, he only needs to give Trumas Ma'aser.
And when he gives Trumas Ma'aser, he gives it of what's left over or the original sum of 10?
No, what's left over? It's left over. So now the Gemara says that when the Mishnah says that Ma'aser Vishen Shnitol Trumasa, we're talking about where he took Trumas Ma'aser and he never took Truma. Why didn't he take Truma? The answer is because the Levi got in before there was a Chiyuv of Truma. Let's say inside. Ma'aser Vishen is not Tochol Pshuta. Lo Yitzricha Shektimu B'Shibbolin, he came and there was still stalks, not the Menu Trumas Ma'aser, not the Menu Trumas Gedola. Which he came early when he was still in stalks. Potter mit Truma Gedola, you don't have to give Truma Gedola. Shenema. The pasuk says you should take Ma'aser mina Ma'aser, 10th of a 10th, which is Trumas Ma'aser. Ma'aser mina Ma'aser ma'ati lecho, v'lo Truma Gedola v'Trumas Ma'aser mina Ma'aser. You don't have to give 2 things. The Levi only has to give 1. What's the 1? Trumas Ma'aser. He does not need to give Truma. What happens if the Levi came before the Kohen? When it's already a pile, when it's already a kri, he should also say the same halacha, that he should only have to give Trumas Ma'aser. So he shouldn't have to give Truma Gedola. About Yehuda pasuk says, Mikol Masru Yiseichem Tovimo is called Trumas Hashem. Mikol, that from all of it. You have to give from all Ma'aser, you have to give Truma, including that which the Levi gets. What made you explain one pasuk referring to one situation, one pasuk referring to another situation? As for Hayitkin B'Halo Yitkin, Rashi says it all. In the Parshas Korach.
No, in
he's sorry when he's giving his moidor that he did all correctly.
Right.
He said he didn't give mice before.
For tumor. Okay, that's the chatchila. But nice if look at Rashi and Koach, Rashi takes all this more. Tais always asks the question. It's a bit difficult to understand what the Gemara means. Maro Isa. What made you see fit? We've got two droshes. One pasuk says Maisa na Maisa that Levi only has to give Tumas Maisa, not Tuma Gedola. I've got another pasuk that says the Levi has to give Tuma Gedola and Tumas Maisa. So we explained. If the Levi got there before there was a Chiyuv Tuma and he got his 10%, so he doesn't need to give Tuma, just has to give Tumas Maisa, because by the time he got there, there was no Chiyuv Tuma, so it's already gone, it's finished. If he got there after there was a Chiyuv Tuma, then he took his 10%. He shouldn't have taken his 10%. He should have first given to the Kohen the 50, the 40, 50, the 60. So therefore, he has to first give Tuma and then Tumas Maisa. The Gemara says, Ma'avo Isa, what made you see the pasuk say that way around? What? Says this, I'm having it another way around. So what would be the having to forget?
Before it was a dog on, then you should still say Mikamas Yosechem is incorrect.
But you've got two psukim.
Yes, so how do you know when to say which?
It's similar to what you say. No, this says that maybe only you need more than dogon. Maybe you need royal pnei abayis. You need that it should already go more than just become a pal. It should be brought into the house, and only then, if the Levi takes it, is chayv. Let's summarize this very clearly. A Kohen gets Truma, the Levi gets Maisa. After the Levi gets Maisa, he gives 10% of what he got, gives it to the Kohen. Under normal circumstances, the owner gives Truma, then the owner gives Maisa, and then the Levi takes 10th of his Maisa to the Kohen. Here we talk about a Levi that did wrong, and as Levi pointed out, the owners also did it wrong, because you're not supposed to give Maisa before Truma. But we're talking about when they did it wrong. They gave Maisa before Truma, and the Gemara says it depends. If he gave it before it was Chayiv Truma, so then the Levi escapes, he does not need to give Truma, and the owner, they both gained a little bit. If he took it after, then since there was already a Chiyuv of Truma on this pile of produce, therefore when the Levi gets his Maisa, he has to first take Truma for the Kohen, and then take Truma's Maisa for the Kohen. So when our Mishnah says, the Maisa Vision, where you took Trumas Maisa, you're allowed to use it for Ruvei Tchumin, and I'll say to you, so what is the Chiddush? What's the answer? He took Trumas Maisa, what's the Chiddush?
Because he did it in the wrong order.
He did it in the wrong order, and he never took Truma. Again, let's say more than that, not just the wrong order. But the Mishnah says that you can use Maisa Vision, which you've taken Trumas Maisa for Ruvei Tchumin. We talk about where you took Trumas Maisa, but you never took Truma, and nevertheless it's okay because the Levi got there before it became a pile.
After it became a pile, you can't eat it.
No, you can't eat it. Became redeemed. Shita. Obviously, if it's redeemed, what else do you expect? He's done everything he can. He's mamish pot of good food to eat. Whenever you redeem Ma'ashin and Hekdesh, you always have to add a fifth. And this person paid the Karen, the principal, but not the fifth. So we're talking about, Mishnah says you can use Hekdesh and Ma'aseh Sheni. You're going to have this 4 times in Shas. For example, by Zimun. If you've got Ma'aseh Sheni that you redeemed it, the Gemara Bracha says that you're allowed to do Zimun. Of course, what's the Chiddush? More asks, this more answers. That you redeemed it, but you never paid the Chumash, but it's still good enough, it's still mutter to eat. The next one, you can't use Tevel. Pshita. Of course you can't use Tevel, you're not allowed to eat Tevel. It's only Tevel Midorabonon. How can something be only Tevel Midorabonon? You took a plant pot which has no holes. So therefore, Minatira is not considered planted in the ground. Only Midorabonon is considered the proper plant. So for Minatira, you didn't take any Trumas Maisas at all. So therefore, we're talking about somebody who didn't take any Trumas Maisas at all. And he'll say to you, let me use it for which Say, what? You want to use Tevel? No, because Minatira don't have to. Kamash Malon. And since Midorabonon you can't eat it, you can't use it for Ruvei Tchumin either. What did you say?
Hydroponic. Grow things in water.
Oh.
Is that up to you?
I don't know. I assume the water is not considered hefsek. But over Ma'aseh Vishen shelonit Truma. Ma'aseh Vishen which you haven't taken Truma, you cannot use for Ruvei Tchumin. Pshita, of course you can't. Since you haven't taken Trumas Maisa, so how in the world would you ever have it to be able to use it for Ruvei Tchumin? It's forbidden to eat. It says, the Levi came first and he got them when it was still apart. But not coming to Tumas Maisa and to Tumas Gedola. And the Levi took Tumas Maisa, not Tumas Gedola. Mother popular buy like a publicity buy that should be also good. So when the Mishnah says that you cannot use Maisa, which you haven't taken Truma, we're talking about Maisa Rishon, which the Levi got, and he has taken Trumas Maisa, but he has not taken Truma Gedola, and he thinks to himself, I don't need to take Truma Gedola because I got there before the Kohen got there. But the answer is yes, you do have to take Truma Gedola. Why? Because by the time you got there was already in a pile, and therefore Chiyuv of Truma was already Chal. Therefore, you cannot eat it, and if you use that for Vitchumen, it's not good for Vitchumen. If you can't use my station and which hasn't been redeemed, then of course you can't use it. It's not been redeemed. You redeemed it correctly. That you redeemed it with a coin that has no face. In the olden days, currency had value because of an intrinsic silver, or gold, or copper content. Besides for that, you'd also make a stamp of a king or something on it to give it more value. If you were to use coins which have got no stamp of a picture on, and use that to redeem, even though they have value, but it's not redeemed, and therefore you cannot use them for Ruvei Tchumin. It has to have silver which has an image on it. So you can't use plain silver circles, discs, as a thing to redeem. Redeeming on property. You have to give, and property you can't give, because property you don't transfer, you don't give over property, you give over the rights of a property, you don't give it over in your hands. So therefore, the Torah is coming to remind that you don't do pidyon hegdish with property. So when the Mishnah says that Ma'aser Sheni and hegdish has not been redeemed, it means it's not been redeemed properly. By Ma'aser Sheni, that you used discs of silver, not coins of silver, and by hegdish we talk about where you used property and not money, and therefore it's not properly redeemed. And that is the chiddush of all the different cases of our Mishnah. If you go through every one, you'll work out why the Mishnah had to tell us that you can or cannot use it for Ruvei Tchumin. Says the next Mishnah. Hashel Eruv Tchumin is different to Eruv Chatzeros. Interesting, another difference. We said one difference before Eruv Chatzeros is enough for one, 2 matzahs for the whole chotzer. It could be 50 families, even though 50 families is not very much. Actually, by Ruvei Tchumin, you have to have enough for every person who wants to use it. Except Mishnah says babies that are so young that they need the mother where they go out, they do not need to have their own food. Everybody else has to have his own food there. Okay. That's just the chag.
They're walking out much.
No, they need the mother. I suppose a 6-year-old needs his mother. So 6-year-old, okay, can walk 3,000 hours easily.
Not nursing.
Yeah, but he needs his mother. He doesn't say nursing, he needs his mother. Another difference is like this. A Ruvei Chatzeros works automatically, meaning if I have bread of yours in my house and bread of yours in my house, so it's as if we're all living together, and therefore Ruvei Chatzeros. A Ruvei Tchumin needs das and speech. Mr. Paul writes, you actually have to say with your mouth, I want to be Krina Shvisa. So if you take, for example, a box of matzahs and put it by a bus stop, and you didn't say anything, and it's no good. You actually have to have intention to do it for a Ruvei Tchumin. And there's a logic to it. I'll discuss a little bit. So a Ruvei Chatzeros works. What's a Ruvei Chatzeros? That we're all sharing a property. A Ruvei Tchumin is I've decided that my home should now be for the Shabbos 2,000 amas away. The fact that I put a box of matzahs there doesn't make it my home. At the end of the day, at home I've also got a box of matzahs. It's only because I've decided, and therefore you have to actually do something about it. So Mishnah says, therefore, what happens if you don't want to walk the 2,000 amas on Friday afternoon? A cheresh is somebody who can't hear and can't speak. Sheita, a fool, a cotton. Or somebody who doesn't believe in Eiruvin. Let's say, for example, I asked one of you to stand 2,000 amos away and to put the Eruv down for me. I can't bother walking to you, so I send a baby or child or a kutte, a goy, to bring it to you. How is the Eruv? Even though he did the delivery service for me, the goy, nevertheless, it's good enough because you only need to have das when you're putting it down the shem shvisa. So that I can rely on you. So it doesn't matter that there's a goy in between or a baby or child in between. As long as the one who puts it down is a kosher, sensible deed. Says the Gemara of the cotton, right? Cotton goyves Eruv, that child's allowed to collect Eruv. Let's just see the second Rashi on the Gemara. Rashi says, Eruv Chatzeros. It's just to make our properties a mixture, a combined property. That means, for example, let's say we actually own a property in partnership. Do we need to do an Eruv Chatzeros? No, because we're actually joint. We do, because we do not belong to each other till now. So it is true. By taking the Eruv Chatzeros together, you are now combining it. But it works automatically from the action that you have taken. You don't need to have the kavanah to go with it. A child can't do that. Says the Gemara, man who said he doesn't believe in Eruv. The truth of the matter is, the Gemara could have said a goy or an apikoros. Why did the Gemara choose a kuti? Pretty correct. No, more than that. Well, why is it a chiddush kuti? See, more because he keeps almost everything. He just doesn't believe in Tchumen. It's therefore not right. If he asked somebody else to take it to him and drop it off by him, let's be choishesh that I say to a shoiter, take it to somebody 2,000 Amos and he'll do it. Maybe that he won't do it. Or I'd say to a goy, where can I rely that will happen? Answers we're talking about that you're watching the child all the way for 2,000 Amos and you see him giving it. We talk about the Chesed, so a different case here, the same case will apply the same answer Chesed gave to another question here. Maybe the person will not take it. Why? When I ask you, I say to you, please will you take the Tchumen? You take it off me. I see that you've taken it off. But when I send it to you with a child, since you never got it directly from me, who says that you'll be willing to do it? Where do I have the promise that you'll do it? Answers the Gemara, that once you've told me and you've assured me that you're going to do it, I can be confident that you will do it. So if you told me you'll do it, I can rely that you'll do it. The Gemara kept saying, lack of Vichil answered. When did they have to come up with an answer that we needed to come on to this? Where were they talking about that we needed to come on to that answer? It says, it's the Tanya Nosno the Pilvo Elichoy, the Kufo Elichoy. A person gave it to an elephant or to a monkey, which the Rishonim here writes that he has seen places where they've trained elephants to do jobs for them, or monkeys to do jobs for them. So what happens is you give your Eruv Tchumen to an elephant or to a monkey to deliver the Eruv. Ein ze Eruv. That's not a good Eruv. Why? Because there's no das when he puts it out. That means the same questions we had in our Mishnah regarding a child or a goy, the Gemara now asks on the vice regarding an animal. And the Gemara gives the same answers. Ateis asks a baby question. That what? Yeah, but he's not actually doing a shlichus. Why? I send the monkey all the way to another yid. The yid puts it down. The monkey is just somebody helping me to get the Eruv from A to B. That's the question. Why did V'chil give the answers on the Brisa? Why did the Gemara ask on the Mishnah as V'chil answered it the similar question on the Brisa? Why didn't they ask the question on the Mishnah itself? Okay, today's God come get so we're going to do it. Just this interesting point to point out the Chis and the V'chil, they gave their answers. It means their akimtas, their explanations, is to answer a brisa. When in reality we needed those akimtas to explain the Mishnah as well. Okay, we'll stop over here. A very new topic tomorrow. It's Hashem about shechazaka or shlichus. Any questions? No, it was start at 5 to 40. Yeah, 40 minutes. I'll press end. Okay, Carl, any questions? David, Yehuda, any questions? No. Okay, I wish you a very good night. That's and everything.
Thank you.